All right, this is the Integrated Rehab and Performance Podcast, and today I'm talking with Tyler Bailey, teaching professional down there at the Grove. Tyler, thanks for taking the time to be here with me today. From taking time from your practice chips there behind you to talk a little bit golf with me. So tell us a little bit more about what you got going on, kind of your background with the game of golf, and how you got to where you are today.
Thanks, Nick. I appreciate you involving me on your podcast. I really appreciate that.
Of course.
A little bit about my background. I started playing at an early age, very, very early, about 5. Started tournaments when I was 7. Had a pretty successful junior golf career. I would say junior golf because after I graduated high school, got into college, got a little burnt out because I put so much heavy emphasis on one sport, and that's a little bit of a long story, but hugely active as a junior golfer right off the bat. Loved the game, loved being alone, loved just having just everything on me, A lot of other sports were more team environment. I was a pretty good athlete, but golf just drove me the most, just because it was all in my control, and I could be in my own headspace. I didn't have to worry about anybody else but my own.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the fact of that. So high school, obviously, went to a couple state championships. Didn't really get anything done there. I wish I would have, been a better golfer.
Sure.
I think we all want to be better.
Yep.
But I was pretty happy with how I played. I mean, back then I played with. There's a sense of like you see and react type of golf. I know that you're going to ask me about my philosophy, and just thinking about that, I don't really per se have a particular philosophy yet, but when I was younger, I noticed one thing. I had an ability to just see and react, and I didn't have the prettiest swing. I had an awful swing, but I knew where the ball was going. Okay. And that at that age made me successful because I just knew how to react based on what I was playing that day.
Yeah.
I wasn't obviously caught up into the mechanics of the swing. I wasn't caught up in the just making my swing look pretty. I just saw and reacted. That's how I grew up playing the game. I know that's kind of almost backwards in today, teaching a lot of students, but we didn't have TrackMan. We didn't have a lot of video. Cell phones were pretty new back then. I mean, you had your old flip phone, but technology was not the way it is today. That's a simple fact. So we learn based on seeing and reacting, basically.
Yeah.
So a little bit more about the background. I got into the business of operations, like golf operations. Got my PGA membership. I'm a PGA member currently. I worked in the operations for a little over a decade. I become a head golf professional at age 27. I reached a dream of mine and figured out that was not what I wanted to do.
Right.
Took a few years, went back into an assistant's position to kind of really have maybe a headspace of figuring out what I wanted to do. At this point, I didn't really feel that instruction, like being able to teach full time, was even an option. I didn't even think that broad.
Right.
So I left the golf business for a little bit and worked into sales. And long story short, I found myself just kind of amongst the guys in the office, giving them lessons because I had a golf background,
Hmm.
and it kind of just sparked just a curiosity of a dream to kind of pursue that. And I didn't know when that was going to come about. I you just kept on working, and the opportunity at the Grove just kind of sprung up on me,
Yeah.
and I decided to give it a go, and hop back into the business. Now, in that meantime, I got the job as an assistant, but uh, a lot more opportunity to teach. And the director of instruction, Jude Linehan, out there, he had kind of took me under his wing, as a mentor. Heavily appreciate that guy. I mean, he's a great friend of mine and a great mentor, and I owe the world to him because he's given me the opportunity to be the lead instructor under him, and I'm very proud of that. I'm honored that he would allow me to do so.
Sure. Yeah.
So being able to shadow him and to really dive into being a coach and an instructor is a true passion of mine, because even when I was away from golf for a little bit there, I found myself coaching people and teaching people while I wasn't in the golf business. So I felt that, it was kind of laid on my heart to get back in and do what I love, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Um,
Yeah.
when you made your way down to the Grove finally, so you were already here in Nashville. The 10 years or decade or so you spent in the golf world prior, was that all here in Nashville?
It wasn't. At an early age, so after college, I worked my first assistant's position at Holston, or not Holston, but Henry Horton Golf Course down in Pulaski, Tennessee.
Okay.
So after that, I moved to Knoxville. It was a big jump for me. Moved to Knoxville as an assistant working at Foxton Country Club. I worked there for about 4 years. And then I felt led. I had a member reach out to me. They wanted me to be a head golf professional at Springbrook Golf and Country Club, a small country club down in Athens, Tennessee. Uh, After I had done that, I decided that that wasn't the route that I wanted to go. So took my um, I took my career towards Holston Hills Country Club, back into Knoxville.
Mm.
In this whole time, I mean, I lived in Knoxville for like literally a decade. So I know a lot of guys over there, great people, love the area. Just kind of went through some personal situations, being married, not being married, and then wanting to move back to the Nashville area, which I'm originally from Tullahoma, Tennessee.
Mm.
So I at least wanted to make the move to come back,
Yeah.
be close to the family, and but that's that. I actually before I left Holston Hills, I went back to Fox Den to work with my buddy Danny. He's the head golf professional over there. He's doing great things, and that's also where Jake Reeves works out at as well.
Okay. Very cool.
Um, huge instructor over there. And just after that, found myself back to Middle Tennessee. So
Yeah, very cool.
it's kind of strange being back in Middle Tennessee. I only spent about 10 years away from there, but moving back, it's odd because I still feel like a newbie. I
Sure.
still feel
Yeah,
like
love's
a,
changed, huh?
a person that is not local to the area because times have changed. I mean, real estate has boomed, and you have so many more people living here. It's not a small town anymore, so it's quite interesting to say the least.
No doubt. What were you selling in the time in between?
Payment processing.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well, not really.
No,
It's
no, not
it's
so much.
actually
Wasn't the
it's
dream?
it's actually the hardest
Is
sale
it?
that you could do, man. Because yeah, it really is. I mean, I don't want to expose the business. I think I learned so much about myself doing it. I jumped into it out of a just a courageous opportunity of jumping out of something that I've always known into something that I have no clue about.
Right.
It was just a opportunity to lean on faith that things would work out at wherever down the road. Didn't have a clue of a timeline, but when you go through a personal situation like that, it makes you want to change a little bit about yourself, and you find yourself doing some courageous things.
Yeah.
So I definitely wouldn't take anything back on that job. I learned so much. That particular type of sale, you hear no a lot, and no can feel pretty uncomfortable
Sure.
at times, but not everybody's perfect. If I could kind of wheel that towards instruction, there's a lot of competition out there. Instruction is very hard. Everybody has kind of their own philosophy, and honestly, I take it to heart. Like, I just want to make people better than they are. I'm not expecting the clientele that I use, uh, that come to me. I'm not trying to turn them into professional golfers. That's not what I'm here for. I'm really trying to grow the game. I'm trying to help them enjoy the game better
Yeah.
than they currently are. That's my goal. I'm pretty relaxed. I want everybody to kind of feel relaxed during my instruction,
Yeah.
during the lesson. So that's kind of my approach. But yeah, I feel like that entire road towards being into sales, hearing no a lot, it actually put more confidence in myself of just saying, yeah, I mean, people are going to say no. People aren't going to like you. People at the end of the day may not even have time for you. It's based on what they want out of their life, and
Right.
and and based on what they kind of in golf, what do they want out of this lesson?
Right. Yeah.
You know, that's why we ask questions. When I worked in sales, I learned to ask questions before talking.
Right.
You need to know more about their business. You need to know more about um, what they're looking for. And if they're not looking for you, a no is a no, and you got to go on and keep on beating at your own drum, really. But into golf instruction, it made me a better listener, and it made me a better um, question asker.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, you have to ask questions to make sure that you're fulfilling the needs of the student. Not everybody's wanting to swing like Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
Not everybody's wanting to swing like tour players. They just want to hit the ball, and they don't understand why they can't hit the ball.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
does that make
it
sense?
certainly does. And when it comes to asking questions, a big part of what I do as well, because man, about 90% of it's just in the history taking, right? When it comes to even diagnosis or understanding what it is that you really need to work on, right? Especially when it comes to pain. Pain can be complex. And so much comes from asking the right questions and asking a whole lot of them. But beyond that is asking the questions about goals. And really, when you do the type of work that I do, where it's so comprehensive, um, where we're going to work on everything that's applicable, right? We're not just working on the painful spots, um, or even just the spots that are restricted a little bit, but you need to really understand what they're looking to get out of it when you're going to do so much work and spend so much time together and really buy into the end result. You need to know what that end result is going to be or is supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I can really resonate with you really have to start with the right questions and asking a whole bunch of them. um, when it comes to, well, I have to say also that that sales experience had kind of set you up to be able to sell yourself to Jude to convince him that you're the right man for the job, to work down there with him. So it all worked out pretty well.
I honestly didn't sell much. When you come into let's say a group, okay, a family, you have to kind of earn your keep.
Hmm.
You have to show that you can support them. You could do what they like their goals. You have to
Right.
figure out what their goals are, and you have to kind of line up with them. it it's most certainly, if I could give anybody advice, like a younger person, traveling in the business, it's not about you entirely, even though that, you want to be successful growing into the business. You have to put yourself in a position to serve.
Hmm.
You have to serve them because a lot of people have been there before you, and they've put more work than you at that particular time. We're not, obviously not talking about long term. Obviously, you put more time into than another person, but they are there for a reason, and they're there for a reason to be above you to kind of teach you, and it's an opportunity to learn
Right.
and to treat the family as to kind of just serve them the best of your ability and learn wherever you're at.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that yeah.
Sounds like you're just a good fit. The right place, right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. We had talked a little bit about your philosophy. You kind of touched on that a little bit. You were mentioning in your background that you were more of maybe a feel type player or situational. Um, how do you, especially because you were mentioning this is before TrackMan and all the data, how do you try to bake that into your 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 I want to say treatment sessions? You don't treat, I treat into your lessons, right? Your lessons with your students. How do you find the
Yeah.
opportunity to turn some of the data points off or black them out or whatever it is that you do you find ways to make that happen where you try to build that into your lessons as well?
Yeah, so data points, it's very rare that I use that stuff. I don't, like, currently right now, I don't use a lot of TrackMan data. I don't, you know. It's on the range. It is feel and see. You see the ball. It's what the ball's doing, cause and reaction, all this stuff,
Yeah.
Not a lot of numbers. So it does heavily revolve around faith from the student to me, to make, like, they have to feel that I have their best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest thing. Like, if you're an instructor and you don't have the numbers, why are they going to come back to you? Like, what's a reason for them to come back to you after the first lesson they they're kind of learning? But in America, we obviously want quick results, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So when you're teaching high level students, because they're successful in other areas, they want quick results. Now, how do you keep them coming back? I think it's honesty.
Yeah.
You have to be honest with them and up front with them to kind of explain everything that they're dealing with. If it's the anatomy of how the biomechanics of how their body is moving, that could be a little tricky because you could confuse them because they don't understand it, and you kind of have to keep that very light.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more of being a coach. You got to come from a background of encouragement, not frustration. If you're a coach and you show frustration, they feel uncomfortable. They kind of go off the vibes that you're
Right.
giving. So if I'm giving a lesson to just any of the members or non-member, I'm going to be very encouraging, and you have to encourage them in a way of like, hey, what are you really good at? And they kind of tell you, like, they say, like, well, math, I'm really good at math. And it's like, okay, well, were you always good at math, or did you have to learn it?
Right.
Because that's something that interests you, obviously, but you kind of have to paint the picture in their head of just like, you don't become good at something by just miraculously it happening. You know, it does take time, whether you think that you put a lot of effort into it or not. There is time involved in getting good at something,
Right. Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Fair enough. And you've certainly have the history, in the sport to understand that really well. When you mentioned kind of being encouraging, you're kind of talking about some of the psychology of it too. And you had mentioned that you're like when you're talking about being more of a reactive or situational. you really are talking about like how you manage your psychology, at least when you were playing back in the day. Have you
Yeah.
baked that into your lessons, or how have you gone about learning more about the psychology of golf and making sure that that is being addressed out on the course with your students as well? Do you have
Yeah.
a general sense or guideline that you like to go by when it comes to taking care of the brain when you're playing golf?
I have not dived into it as much as I would want to.
Sure.
Um, I know it's a big part on it, but I'm trying to create more swings that are, I guess, more so reliable.
Hmm.
What I mean by that is there's a difference between being an athlete, an elite athlete, and kind of somebody that's maybe not an athlete. You know, that's a real thing.
Right.
I think the biggest question is we have a lot more, it's sad to say, unathletic people, and I think it's more due to like poor motor skills that limitates their ability to hit the ball.
Right.
Okay, so I think that is more of my um, that's more of my goal is to figure out how I can make the average golfer better. The mental side of the game, I will teach my students, my younger kids that are playing in tournaments. I have to constantly tell them that they need to will the ball. Okay. And they kind of look at me, they're like, what does that mean? Well, the way I see that is when I was younger, I knew my swing was I didn't know what my swing was doing, but I had a very good sense of where my hands were in the swing and what my wrists were doing.
Yeah.
Club face control, right?
Yep.
But on the side of that, when you step up to the first tee from the range, you understand what your ball is doing. I tell my students, you're going to have to play what you're playing from the range on that day.
Hmm.
When you
Yeah.
step up, you have to have an idea of what the ball is going to do. That's number one. I tell the kids like they need to know like every day you're not going to be swinging it perfect every day,
Right.
but if you're on that range and you have a tournament, you kind of have to play that shot with what you're dealt with.
Hmm.
You know, especially at that age because they don't really know. I mean, when you're 10, 12 years old, you don't know the mechanics of a golf swing, and you don't know like they don't need to be in their head.
Right. Yeah.
They need to just be able to see and react. That's what they need to do.
Yep.
Um, Secondary would be a routine. I teach them a good routine. Uh, when you teach a child a routine, sometimes they don't even know that they should put the ball in between you and them and the target. They kind of step off to the side and kind of look, but if you're trying to hit it in a certain direction, you would think of like a good sport, like let's say soccer. You know, you've got a goal. Well, if we could at least get it down that goal, that's a pretty good aim.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know the dimensions of a soccer goal, but by visually looking where you want to hit it, like that's what I mean by willing the golf ball. You like telling these kids you have to visualize where you want this ball to go, and you get up there and you make it happen.
Yeah. I gotcha.
Let out all the noise, but the routine is visualize and just do it.
Gotcha.
That like your mind has to be more of the outcome versus a positive outcome.
Right.
What do you want the best scenario to be? If you're thinking about the water on the right or the out of bounds on the left, well, most chances you're going to be hitting it to the water on the right or out of bounds on the left.
Hmm.
But if you have your focus, your mindset on what the goal is, you have a better chance hitting that goal.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Routine that checks out. Playing the swing that you have that day. That's something I've been trying to do a little bit better recently. And you mentioned your wrists, and you were someone who's really good at just understanding where your hands were in space and what your wrists were up to. And man, I got to tell you, I'm going through a tough spot right now where my wrists are doing all sorts of funky stuff. And I've gone from a lifelong slicer and fader to I'm hooking everything,
Mm.
and I cannot stop it at the moment. Uh, so all I can feel is my wrists, and I don't want to feel them anymore. So I got to get out of them, right? But yeah, so just knowing when to take the focus or the cue externally and take it out of the internal, which is a game I have to play a little bit, especially with patients. Is there's a point where we're going to have to go internal for a little bit to
Mm.
to drive some change and get them feeling the right things, and then we got to work as hard as we can to get that back external again and make it outcome based, or at least just external based, where we can have it task oriented. Accomplish this task. Don't worry about where you are in space. Just let your body figure that out and make sure that they're getting to the right position still. And so
Yeah.
that can be a tough game to play. And you'd mentioned where sometimes you got athletes and great athletes, and you don't have some athletes other times, and being able to work through the spectrum of the person in front of you
Yeah.
to get that outcome eventually. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of
And,
similarities there in that regard. Yeah.
yeah. And that's kind of hard to say, I mean, when you say like non athletic, I mean, it's kind of a thing these days.
Yep.
I mean, like I grew up playing in the yard, playing football, playing baseball. You don't see that very often these days.
Right.
And that's the base ground of motor skills, is a child getting out there and learning how to move their body naturally.
Right.
And I hey, we're dealing with it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of children out there and there's a lot of adults out there that just can't move for the golf swing because it's the basic ground of motor skills weren't really uh, like they weren't used,
Yep. Yeah.
you know?
And then there's layers of compensation to add on top of that as well. So you got a joint that isn't moving well, and you also have someone who maybe has some motor skill issues, and you put those two things on top of each other, and that's a tough case right there, especially when you're
Yeah,
trying to get some performance out of them. But
right.
that's what I try to focus on, is the layers of compensation, and just make sure that the body can do what it needs to do. Then we work a little bit into the time and motor control and sequencing, and then let you guys hone that in really with the golf club.
Yeah,
So happy to help you as best I can. Uh,
yeah, appreciate it.
yeah, of course. Can I ask you what are you seeing most common with Grove golfers, right? Golfers from the Grove. Is
Yeah.
there a thing that you're working on all the time, right? More than 50% of the time. First thing is like, hey, we just got to work on this. Sometimes some guys say like it's just the takeaway. First thing we're working on, just about everyone, is takeaway or coil, or maybe it's the slice and it's the swing path. Like, what is it that seems to be the number one thing down there at the Grove that's infecting swings?
Well, I mean, it's funny, like the movement that has been probably like the worst movement of all that I've seen while giving instructions is I call the early spin out.
Mm,
So you complete your backswing, and the old teachings, okay, any books that you probably would read would say that the lower half starts the swing. Not saying that that's wrong. It, it's yes, it's correct, but it's the sequencing. It is how the body is moving. What position is it in? The problem is most people have they don't have an idea of what that means.
right.
And so they complete their backswing, and then as soon as they get to the top, they just turn their entire body.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I call the early spin out.
Yeah.
And in that moment, they have no clue where the club is in their swing. And I've dived into a little bit of like trying to understand the body, and maybe a philosophy could like I think the nervous system is very, very important in a golf swing.
Oh yeah.
You're the sensation, like the nerves in your hands are very, very important.
Mm.
And that does not need to be left out. I don't think any great golfer would carelessly be turning their body and have no clue where their hands and arms are in the swing. I I just don't. I don't think that would be the case. Um, I would think that like you would be in a lost situation if you didn't have any understanding of
Oh yeah.
where your hands are in the swing. Because that right there, like as a human being, we use our hands more than anything. You're grabbing things. How do you think about grabbing a cup and how to drink water? Of course not. That's a natural ability, but obviously the brain is signaling your nervous system to move your hand in a way to create that movement. Like I feel like the nervous system is very important for the golf
Oh
swing,
yeah. Oh yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
So, call that a philosophy if you will, but I mean, I just don't buy entirely the swing being totally involved with the lower body. I think it's very important, but I think the nervous system and understanding where your hands are is equally important.
I see. So you're seeing this early spin out, and you think that could only be a product of people not understanding where their hands are. That would never be allowed to
Yes.
happen if people had a really good understanding of where their hands were oriented in space. I see. So
Yeah.
that's you think it as a nervous system problem. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean it certainly
Yeah.
could be. Um, and yeah, I think you could get there if you really overemphasize that the sequencing component to the swing, where I think that the pelvis has to turn first, right? And TPI has done a great job of getting all this data, but there's a difference between looking at that graph and realizing it's in like milliseconds, and not
Yeah.
right. Like things are subtle, and so to get all of these things really working together, the feel of it is going to be a lot different than what any golfer might think it actually is, right? And so
Yeah.
that these degrees of separation are subtle, and to be a great golfer, they need to be there. But um, the feel versus real in that case. So
Exactly.
yeah, and then you get people that are just a little hip happy, and probably people that were athletes, maybe even athletes struggle with this more than non-athletes, where they were developing power in a different way. Baseball players are the obvious like first example there, where they don't really have to worry about club face control with a baseball bat, and they can develop power in different ways and still be successful. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting theory about nervous system proprioception being an issue that could stem or at least allow that early spin out to happen too. Very interesting. And so
Yeah.
you do see that a lot then as people get to the
A
backswing,
lot.
and then they turn and maybe they start standing up and all sorts of crazy stuff happens. Um, yeah,
It's
yeah,
just body sequencing. They don't understand. Like it's. I know what they're trying to do, but they don't understand that there has to be a sequence. Like
yeah.
the perfect view of the downswing would be like, okay, I'm obviously I'm obviously rotating back. I've got internal rotation with the trail hip. Now on the way down, I'm kind of I'm adducting the arms back down to the center line, and then I'm turning.
Mm,
So during that process, like I feel my arms, I feel the wrists, like I feel where my hands are in that entire moment. But it's just like when you watch a pitcher throw the ball, watch where their butt is. Their butt is driving towards the target
mhm.
when they are releasing the pitch. So the unfortunate thing in golf is like, okay, we have both feet that are tied to the ground, and of course we don't want you to lift your foot. We don't want to lift the target foot. So, but how do you kind of choreograph the your target side, or let's say like your left buttocks to drive more towards the hole? So where should your arms, where should your hands, where should your sternum be during that sequencing? but I feel like everything, like your upper half is delayed back here and your lower half is going that direction.
That's right. Yep.
But that doesn't make sense to, I guess we could put them in the category of like being non-athletic or needing help in their motor skills. Is I don't have to think about that. Great players don't have to think about that because that is into the concept of, you see it and you react. That's all you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Your basic fundamentals are created at a very young age where I don't have to think about what my lower body is doing. And I'm sure like
Yeah.
a lot of high level golfers, they don't have to think about it too, you know.
Yep.
And it's very hard to teach that. It's very hard. It's a very hard movement. The lower body is in a golf swing is a very hard movement because it's moving laterally, but it's also like it's providing torque
Right.
on a horizontal level as well. So there's a lot going on there, and if your average person doesn't have like the dynamic balance or stability, like it's the hard. It's probably, I think it's the hardest movement
Yeah.
for golf.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
It's torque in all three planes, and then you have vertical and horizontal forces as well. So it's just about everything. Um,
Yeah.
where I see this, and I get to spend time doing this in my treatment sessions, is trying to get golfers to be able to feel this a little bit. I don't have to put a club in the hand and worry about club face control like you do, but I get to try to create a body that's at least capable of doing this stuff. And one drill that I find really difficult, that some people struggle with and some people don't. You had mentioned some people it makes sense to drive this power; they don't really have to think about it. But one thing I'll have people do is maybe hard to explain, but they put one foot up on the wall behind them, and the other foot's obviously on the ground, and that's their stance leg for this drill. They turn uh, away from the stance leg, then they turn into that stance leg with a medicine ball kind of pulled up into their armpit, and then they throw the medicine ball straight down next to their kind of stance foot. And you can
Yeah.
switch sides as well. And what I want them to do is pull this medicine ball up so that it's kind of in their armpit like this. It's not a very powerful, it's like a chest pass, right?
Yeah.
It'd be much better to put a hand on top and slam the ball like that. But I want them to kind of chest
Sure.
pass the ball down into the ground. And instead of using so much upper half power to get them to use a little bit more some vertical force, is they should dip
Mm-hmm.
and drop down to the ground as they're loading into that shoulder, and then their lower half should come up as they throw the ball down. And I see like half the population, half the golfers will pull it into their side and then dip down as they throw the ball down. And I think you can
Yeah.
imagine how that makes no sense to you if you're trying to create
Yeah.
power. And then the rest kind of get it where they're dipping down as they're loading up, and then they're coming up and extending and basically jumping as they throw the ball down like it should be. And
Yeah.
some people struggle to get that timing and sequencing and cueing to understand, hey, no, we're dipping and loading up as we go back, and then we're shooting up vertical as we throw the ball down, and that we can create so much more force using the lower half that way. So it's a great drill for a lot
Absolutely.
of people who struggle to understand that, at least when it comes to creating some vertical forces from the lower half and how we can integrate
Mm-hmm.
that into a treatment plan and things like that. So in all sorts of things where we have to deal with that, and then you get the hard job of putting a small club face and trying to center that thing. You have to do all of that as well and create speed. But I just want to make sure that they can at least do it in the first place. So
Yeah. Exactly.
yeah, that is interesting. That early spin out and some kind of connecting that to the nervous system and understanding that. I can definitely
Yeah.
chew on that a little bit.
Yeah.
What are you noticing from the same folks in terms of aches, pains, and different things like that? Are people coming in and you're typically seeing, or you hear them complaining about the same similar stuff?
Um. If I were to say, I would heavily say maybe back pain.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I think I feel like back pain is a huge thing in golf.
Oh yeah.
Because I had it 10 years ago. I'm like swinging, out of this world, a lot of torque, and I'm experiencing back pain. I know a lot of great golfers that started um, early on being successful, and they had to drop out of the game based on a back pain.
Oh yeah.
I, and So I put a huge emphasis on posture in the like at the setup,
Yeah.
because what I'm trying to do with an average golfer is to create a swing that's repeatable. Okay. If they don't feel much sensation in their hands, they don't have um, that sense of seeing and reacting, you have to formulate a swing based off of the movements and biomechanics of how the body works and how it's just moving in motion. We know that the ball's more in front of us. So if we have our, I'm diving pretty deep here. So if you don't understand, please, stop me and we can talk about it. But so big picture, back hurts. I blame that on poor posture. Um, I like to see posture, your spine being more so over your feet, not necessarily seated but I like to see people with tall knees.
Okay.
But at the same time, I want their spine to be set over their feet, because their spine's in a position of being able to rotate naturally without any harm.
Yep.
If anytime you start bending the spine, then you will feel tension. You can call that whatever you want. You could call it an X factor. You can call it, um, I'm not going to dive any further on that, but I feel like it's a very tense environment, and intense environments that can cause injury.
Sure. Yeah.
I look at a lot of the older swings, back in the days, like, I mean, I feel like they stood up a little taller.
Hmm.
They played longer because they didn't have any spinal injuries. They didn't have any problems rotating. Their swing was more fluid than mechanical.
Right.
So I put huge emphasis on anybody any student that comes to me. I'm looking at their posture,
Great.
because it definitely helps. Like, if they're in proper posture, it influences a pretty good movement, a pretty good flow of how the lower half works. So, and two, I don't want them to get injured, you know. I mean, does that make sense to you? Why I would want them to feel more tall at address?
Yeah, it sounds like you're trying to take the tension out of the muscles of the back, like the erector spinae, because when these muscles start essentially creating extension through there, now
Yeah,
to rotate, we have to rotate through this muscle tension essentially. You can even think about it this way: when the pelvis, we'll even do a test when the pelvis is flexed too much or extended too much in the other direction. Really, if you put too much flexion into that spot, you actually will 100% limit the rotation of the lumbar spine at all. Not that we
yeah,
want much rotation out of the lumbar spine, but same thing goes. The more flexion or extension you put in through the spine, the less rotation you can get out of it. Now there's this kind of happy medium where you're in a good golf posture and position versus maybe too much flexion extension where now you're actually taking rotation out of it, or you have to really crank yourself into it.
yeah,
So yeah, it makes sense. And then just from the standpoint of where injury, kind of where I talked about, but you thinking we can be more fluid from a position that's maybe a little bit more upright. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you like, how do you walk? on a natural basis, like if you're just walking normally, your spine is more north and south and erect. Like it's a very comfortable position.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you want to set up that way? I mean, you're going to still provide torque that way, but I mean, let me just kind of add a point. The more you tilt the spine over, you have to pronate and supinate the arms on the way up.
Mm.
If you are more, if you were taller, let's say if the spine was more north and south, then the swing, the arms are in motion as your shoulders are rotating back and through. The arms are more in a position of just abducting and adducting throughout the swing.
I see.
So again, I feel like with less pronation and supination, which that involves heavily on what the club face is doing,
Oh, yeah.
I feel like you have a better opportunity presenting a square club face of the ball with your spine more
Yeah.
uh, taller.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, maybe I should stand up a little bit more. Stop hooking it. Um,
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then, so you're noticing a lot of low back pain, which is
Yeah.
typical, right? That's the big thing. Low
Yeah.
back pain and things that I find associated with that tend to be you're looking at a lot of golf position and posture. So very happy that you're working on that to take some load
Yes.
off that low back and improve positioning without having to
Yeah.
make the low back fight for it. Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, I come from I hurt so bad. Like, I mean, 5 years ago, I had a swing that was the opposite of what I'm saying. I mean, very, very bent over, a lot of pronation, supination with the arms, and kind of not understanding what the arms and how to use the levers. There's a lot of misunderstandings, and what in long term created back issues for me because I didn't really understand the mechanics of the body. So, kind of diving into that, I have tried to formulate a swing that takes away back pain. You are using your lower half to generate power, yes, ground forces, but when your spine is more over your body, you could carry the weight better. And here's a picture for you. If I had a 45 pound weight in my hands, okay, like I'm gonna stand up
yeah.
just to give you a
Oh yeah.
demonstration. So if I had like a 45 pound weight in my hand like this, okay, and I'm bent over, how far do you think you could actually throw that weight this way? Because you're only using really torque, so that's only like one source of power. But if you like raise your spine up where your spine is more above your feet, that weight becomes light, and
Right.
you could use torque and you could use ground forces to sling that weight even further.
Yeah.
So I guess in theory, what I'm saying is the function of a golf swing works better if you're taller. You could sling, like, you'll be able to generate more club speed that way.
Yeah, you're talking a little bit about like leveraging the lever arms, right? Limiting
Yeah,
the big things can be heavier with the lever arm kind of increases there, and you can increase
yeah,
speed just by changing position a little bit. Uh, yeah, very interesting. And I think long drive guys will do that too. They will definitely get taller. They'll basically
yeah,
stand up, squat back down, and stand up again. But they're
yeah,
doing all sorts of funky stuff. So we won't look into it too much. But
yeah,
unless you're competing in that. But cool. Yeah, that's insightful. That really helps actually. Um, yeah, good. I was going to ask. So I wanted to finish up here with a couple questions for you personally here in the Nashville area. Um, I like
yeah.
to ask the golf pros what are some holes that are notorious kind of trouble holes for them. What have you found here in the Nashville area that you've identified as like the hardest hole or hardest couple of holes?
Mm, I honestly, water holes, like really right in front of them.
I see.
Okay. Your average golfer doesn't shoot below 100. Okay. So getting over the water is a challenge.
For sure.
So it all drives back to creating a consistent swing to make the ball react the way they want it to. And everybody wants the ball in the air. It's a pretty sight. It's awesome. And a beginner loves the feeling. When they hit the ball in the center of the face and the ball goes in the air, they usually look straight back at me with a huge smile
Yeah.
and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that felt so good." I'm like, "Yeah, that's the goal. We want to do that every time."
Right.
You know, that's the biggest. I feel like that's the biggest issue.
Sure.
Like, is on a golf course, how could an average golfer make it over the water 150 yards? That's hard
Right.
for them.
Yeah.
You know, how can we make that? How can we fix that problem for them? You know, obviously we gotta that they need to do one thing is to be able to put the ball in the center of the club face.
Oh yeah.
You know,
That would help. Yep. What have you found personally? Is there one hole that comes to mind? Maybe even at the Grove specifically that you kind of dread, or it's go time and it's got your number maybe.
let's see. Out of the Grove, I would say number 9 because there's a bunker typically where I drive the ball. All right, so you're going to have a pretty good amount of yardage in, like 100, maybe 185 to 200 in on a par four,
Hmm.
depending on what tees you play. You know, black or silver. Typically I'll just play the silver. It's okay. And that's a lot. Like for a par four, if you've got like a 6 iron in hand or a 7 iron in hand, or if the wind is literally blowing straight into your face and then you have to put a four in your hand, that's a long par four,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like that's, and the Grove, it's very quiet in the morning as far as wind, but if like, I don't get much opportunity to play in the morning. I mean, that's just typically lessons are done in the morning
Right.
because people want to do them before the heat starts. But if you play in the afternoon, you're going to get a major amount of wind on you,
I see.
because that course is pretty open.
Yeah.
So typically on hole 9, you're going to get a pretty much, all this wind straight in your face. And it could end up, you could have a 6 iron, but you could have a 4 iron. And that's a very tough shot for the second shot. And then also the tee shot, there is literally a bunker where I'm hitting my drive. So I don't want to hit a 3-wood because I don't want to have I don't want to have a 220 shot.
Yeah.
I want to hit my driver so I can kind of keep it around 200 or a little bit less. And that bunker kind of just hangs around just right there in the center. So
I see.
you've got to miss it.
I
So I
see.
think that right there is the most challenging hole, I believe.
Gotcha. Is it the rated the hardest hole or close? It's up there.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah, I gotcha. Any other courses you've played in the Nashville area that you think about, like NGAC's first hole or something like that?
I've played I think there's a misconception of that we get to play a lot of courses
I
in this
see.
area,
Yeah,
but
I gotcha.
I mean, I'm working all the time, so
Yeah,
I don't want to act like I've played a bunch of courses. I haven't.
yeah,
I
yeah.
stay pretty busy.
Yep.
But I've played at the Legends course, Legends Club. My brother's a member up there, and
There you go.
I tell you what, I love both sides. You got the north side, the south side. They're both, golly, they're totally different. But I do like playing out there.
Yeah, good.
As far as specifics of like what hole is hard, you know, I haven't played it enough to really have a like a arch nemesis of a
Nemesis.
hole. Like I really haven't.
Well, that's
And
good.
I couldn't say that for other courses, you know.
Yep.
So now I could probably speak more on courses in Knoxville than I could here.
Yeah, fair enough. Uh,
You know, like Holston Hills, great golf course. You know, if you go out there, you have to drive the ball very well.
I see.
If you don't drive the ball well, you're not going to play well because the rough is so high and
Mhm.
it's going to make a terrible, terrible second shot for you. So if anybody is driving the ball very well out there, that they have the ability to shoot well.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a shame you don't get to play more, but I guess I understand.
yeah,
I've been doing my
yeah.
best this summer, but it never turns out like I want it to. I never played nearly as much as I'd like to. But
Right, right.
it is what it is. Um,
I mean, I tell you what, I miss. I mean, as far as Knoxville, I missed. You know, I always say like Foxton was my home course. I knew a lot of people out there. They treated me like family out there. I know as far as a golf professional, you spend a lot of time with these people, you know, and being away from home, you tend to latch on to people because you don't have obviously family nearby. And I will say, I'll always, you know, say that Fox Den was kind of like a home for me because I was there all the time.
yeah,
And it was kind of like a neighborhood thing where people actually used the facilities and they were always around you, you know, asking how you're doing, making sure you're okay. I mean, great people up there.
yeah,
So spending majority of my time working at Foxton growing up, I mean, it was definitely a pleasure. I loved working for that place. Great people.
yeah. Well, very good. You'll continue to get that, I think, here in Nashville as you continue to play and make the Grove your home too, or maybe Legends.
Yeah,
You can latch on to
yeah.
your brother and hang out there. That's good that you got to diversify a little bit, thanks to your brother.
No, yeah, I love the Grove. I love the Grove. Great membership. It's a great place. It really is.
Yeah, yeah,
So the staff's cool. You got you've got Doug Oob. He's director of golf. You got head golf professional Don Jones. You know he's heavily well known in the Knoxville area as well. And then my buddy mentor Jude Linehan. Man,
yeah,
he's awesome.
yeah. It's a good crew you guys got.
Um, yeah, yeah. I definitely look up to him. He's awesome. He's good.
Well, very good, Tyler. Thanks for doing this. We'll do it again
Yeah.
sometime, and maybe we'll do a walk-in podcast out there on the ninth hole at the Grove, and we'll watch it tear you apart, or maybe you'll have victory. Um, but we'll
Sounds
see.
good, man.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, Tyler. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Of course.